Holy Spirit of God, the breath that proceeds from the Father and the Son, creates and makes all things new. The Holy Spirit of God can even make human creatures all that God intended them to be. The day of Pentecost celebrates the high point of the gospel. It is, in a word, the crowning glory of Eastertide. Today is the last day of the season of Easter. You will note that we extinguished the Paschal candle this morning. We celebrate on this day all the benefits of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, of his coming into our lives and into the church through the gift of the Holy Spirit. The coming of the Spirit makes this good news now available to the whole world. The day of Pentecost ushered in a new age, the age of the Spirit. Jesus has returned to his Father and his throne. This is the age of the Spirit, the age of new life for all people. Now, we often hear about the beginning of new eras, new periods in human life. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, headlines reported as Harry and Meghan wed, a new era begins. A man walks on the moon, and it is a giant step for mankind, a new age. After the terrorist attacks of 9/11, it was being said that our lives would never be the same. The internet supposedly opened a new era for humanity. When a new well is drilled in a third world village or developing world village, or a new power plant is being built in an area that had no power before, an important official will address the people and speak of a new era, a new start, a new creation, a new epoch. But in fact, human life in its relationships goes on as it had before. The only difference is that the quarrels at home, the fights in the street, the deceptive talk and selfish grasping is now done in electric light and with a computer while drinking clean water. Real human newness cannot be about a building. It cannot be about a web of information or a landing on the moon or a better homeland security. It cannot be, human newness cannot be about a different psychological theory, a redesigned sociological paradigm. It cannot be about a new communication system, nor can it be about a new set of laws or even a more rigorous enforcement of old laws. You cannot change the quarrels in a family by eating better food or by installing a better computer software or by buying a bigger car. A real evolutionary step can only be made if mentalities and attitudes change. Real progress can only be made if outlooks and judgments change. A new life, a new world is only possible if our hearts and minds are transformed, if room is made in our lives and our hearts and our minds, room for the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. That is what happened the moment the Spirit of God descended upon the apostles. At that instant, all the disciples of Jesus became not only capable of speaking all kinds of languages, but were willing to use the languages to contact and talk with people they never would have thought to even address before. It happened when they went from believing in forgiveness to showing forgiveness. It happened when they went from believing that God would protect them to venturing forth from the upper room into the danger-filled streets of Jerusalem. It happened when followers of Jesus went from thinking about what he had said to proclaiming and living what he said. It happened when they began reaching out to heal, to serve, to love all those around them. There is a mysterious moment in our lives, a time when belief comes alive, a time when our thinking about the promises of God that God has made becomes in us a transforming faith, a moment when ideas and concepts suddenly move our minds and our hearts. And as our minds and hearts are transformed, our feet, our hands, and our lips begin to move in a new and life-giving way. This transformation is the gift of the Holy Spirit, a time when the fruit of the Holy Spirit, which now dwells in all flesh, seeks to bring us closer to God and closer to one another. For the first disciples, that moment happened, as we heard this morning, with a rush of wind, tongues of fire, and it still happens that way for some people. It happened to the 11 apostles on Easter Sunday evening when Jesus breathed his Spirit into them. Note how the turbulent account in the book of Acts differs. Could it be more different than that quiet Sunday evening we hear about in John's Gospel, where he breathed his Spirit into them? The early church also experienced many ways in which the Holy Spirit came to the gathered community. Many ways we've heard about through the years. As John Wesley's heart was strangely warmed when he listened to the commentary on Paul's letter. For some it comes in a slow evolution of growth and spiritual maturity. For others, it might come in the service and sacrifice for others. For still others, it comes in other ways. St. Paul, writes that this transformation is the evidence, it's the sign, it's the seal of our relationship with God. All descriptions of the coming Spirit tell us of a special relationship God establishes through Jesus with all humanity, not just one exclusive group of believers. This is the true definition of the third person of the Trinity. This is it, God with us and at work in the world right now. That is the Holy Spirit. This is the Holy Spirit, God with us, at work in the world Now, none of us can claim to have exclusive control of the countless ways the Spirit of God works to bring the whole earth into relationship. For instance, look at the many names that have been given to the Spirit. Comforter, which generally means strengthener, comforter, sustainer, sanctifier, advocator, counselor, each of them with a different role. Yet in every case, the work of the Spirit is to glorify Jesus. The work of the Spirit is to make Jesus known as the Son of God, the one who reveals the Father completely and so shares His glory. The Holy Spirit allows for new ways in which the truth of Jesus' teaching is open to us. Yes, new ways are opened all the time. Each of us is given the gift of the Holy Spirit at baptism, reestablished at confirmation, and always available. We don't need to wait for rushing winds or tongues of fire. We don't need to wait to comprehend every aspect of Christian theology or to have lived the life of a saint. New and transformed life in the Spirit happens when we are open to God's love and God's work through us. There are so many things in our lives that clamor for attention. I don't imagine I'm telling you anything there. So many things. Yet, I know that our existence can feel harried, and at the same time, it can feel routine, boring, plodding. And most often, maybe you've discovered this, that the answer isn't doing more, but making room for the Spirit to grow. We discover that in this new life, we find that offer of peace, that peace which Jesus has promised. When we make room for the Holy Spirit, the picture we get, I think, is a picture of the church vividly alive, excited, enthusiastic. On the day of Pentecost, things happened. In fact, astonishing things did happen. Life was heightened, was intensified, it was sensitized. There was nothing flat or dull or ordinary about the early church. The same Spirit, the very same Spirit is given to us. He just needs the room to work. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.